Picture this. You did everything right. You skipped the impulse buys. You said no to the weekend trip your friends were planning. You transferred money into your savings account every single month like a responsible adult. And now you've got a few $1,000s sitting there, earning interest, and you feel good about it. You should feel good about it, right? Here's the problem. That money you're so proud of? It might be quietly working against you. Not in some dramatic, obvious way. Not in a way your bank is going to warn you about. But in a slow, invisible way that's been draining your real wealth for years without you ever noticing. My name is Sachi, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, the systems built around it, and why doing the responsible thing doesn't always lead to the outcomes we expect. If you've ever wondered why your savings account feels safe but your financial progress feels stuck, make sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up changing how you see your money. Now, before we get into what's actually happening to your savings, let me ask you something. When was the last time you checked the interest rate on your savings account? Not just glanced at it, actually looked at it, compared it to something, and thought about what it means in real dollar terms. If you're like most people, the answer is probably never, or maybe once when you first opened the account and you thought 0.5%. That sounds fine. And then you moved on with your life. That number is not fine. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why. Let's start with something called inflation. You've probably heard the word. Maybe it makes you think of gas prices or grocery bills. But most people don't fully understand what inflation actually does to money that's just sitting still. Here's the simplest way to think about it. Inflation is the rate at which the purchasing power of your money decreases over time. In plain English, the same dollar buys less stuff every year. The long-term average inflation rate in the United States is around 3% per year. Some years it's lower. Some years, like we saw recently, it's dramatically higher. But 3% is a safe, conservative baseline to work with. Now here's where your savings account becomes the villain of this story. The national average interest rate on a traditional savings account sits around 0.4% to 0.5%. Some of the big banks, Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, offer as little as 0.01%. That is not a typo. 0.01%. On a $10,000 balance, that earns you $1 per year. $1. So let's do the actual math here, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. If inflation is running at 3% and your savings account is earning 0.5%, you are losing 2.5% of your purchasing power every single year. You're not breaking even. You're going backwards, slowly, quietly, and consistently. On $10,000, that's $250 of real-world value disappearing every year. Not from your balance will actually go up slightly. That's the cruel part. The number in your account looks like it's growing, but what that number can actually buy you is shrinking. Your bank account is lying to you with math. Think about it this way. Imagine you had $10,000 in 2014 sitting in a standard savings account. 10 years later, that account might show $10,500. Looks fine, right? But in terms of what that money can actually purchase, groceries, rent, a car, a vacation, you'd need closer to $13,400 to have the same buying power you started with. You lost $2,900 in real wealth while your account balance went up. That's not saving. That's a slow leak you never noticed. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because inflation isn't the only problem. It's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the money you didn't make because your money was sitting in the wrong place. And this is the concept that separates people who build real wealth from people who stay financially stuck, even when they're doing everything they were told to do. Let's run two scenarios side by side. Person A puts $10,000 into a traditional savings account, earning 0.5% annually. After 20 years, they have roughly $11,000. They feel responsible. Their money is safe. Person B puts the same $10,000 into a simple low-cost index fund tracking the S&P 500, which has historically returned around 8 to 10% annually on average. After 20 years, they have somewhere between $46,000 and $67,000. Depending on market conditions, potentially more, same starting amount, same 20 years, completely different outcomes. The difference isn't that person B is smarter, it's not that they had access to some secret investment club, it's that they understood one simple thing: money that isn't growing is shrinking. There is no neutral, there is no safe in a way that actually preserves wealth. There is only growing fast enough to outpace inflation, or slowly losing ground while your balance pretends otherwise. Now you might be thinking, but what about risk? The stock market can crash. At least my savings account is guaranteed. And that's a fair concern. It's also exactly what the banks are counting on you to think. Here's what's true. Yes, the market goes up and down. Yes, there are years where it drops significantly. 2008 happened. 2020 happened. These things are real. But here's what the fear of market volatility conveniently ignores. Over any 20-year period in the history of the S&P 500, the market has never produced a negative return. Not once. Not even when you include the Great Depression, Black Monday, the dot-com crash, 2008, and a global pandemic. If you stayed invested for 20 years, you made money. Every single time. Meanwhile, the safe savings account, it has produced a negative real return, meaning a loss of purchasing power, in the majority of years over the past 2 decades when adjusted for inflation. So which one is actually risky? The thing that's never lost money over 20 years? Or the thing that's reliably eroded your purchasing power almost every year? The answer might genuinely surprise you when you sit with it. But here's something most people don't realize about why this happens. It's not just about returns, it's about what your savings account was actually designed to do, and it was never designed to build your wealth. Savings accounts were created to serve one specific purpose: liquidity. They're meant to hold money you might need quickly, your emergency fund, next month's rent, the car repair fund. That's it. That's the whole job. The problem is, somewhere along the way, the savings account got promoted from its actual role, short-term cash holder, into the starring role of someone's entire financial strategy, and that promotion was never supposed to happen. Your bank didn't correct this misunderstanding. In fact, they benefited from it enormously. Every dollar you park in a savings account at 0.5% is a dollar they're lending out at 6%, 8%, 10%, or higher. They are making real returns off your money and handing you a fraction of a percent as a thank you note. You became the bank's savings account, and your return is just as bad as yours feels to you. Now let's talk about a specific version of this problem that almost nobody talks about, and it affects people who are actually trying to do everything right. It's called the high-yield savings trap. Over the last few years, high-yield savings accounts have become incredibly popular, and for good reason. They offer significantly better rates than traditional banks, sometimes 4% or even 5% during periods of higher federal interest rates. If you have one, good, genuinely good. You're ahead of most people. But here's the trap. People find a high-yield savings account earning 4.5%, feel like they've solved the money problem, and stop there. They park everything in it. Their emergency fund, their vacation fund, their house fund, their retirement savings. Everything. Because 4.5% feels great compared to 0.01%. And it is better. But it's still not a wealth-building strategy. It's an improved version of the same fundamental mistake. Here's why. High-yield savings account rates are not fixed. They move with the federal funds rate. When the Fed raises rates, HYSA rates go up. When the Fed cuts rates, which it has done repeatedly throughout history, those rates drop fast, sometimes within weeks. The 4.5% you're earning today could be 2% in 18 months, and you're back to barely breaking even with inflation. The stock market has a bad year sometimes. Your HYSA rate changes without you even getting a warning email. So what's the actual answer here? What should you actually be doing with your money? Let's talk about that. Because this video isn't about making you feel bad for using a savings account. It's about making sure you understand what each type of account is actually for and matching your money to the right tool for the right job. Think of your financial life like a toolbox. A hammer is a great tool, but if you're trying to drive a screw, it's the wrong tool, and using it harder won't fix that. A savings account is a great tool for what it's designed for, but if you're using it to build long-term wealth, you're hammering a screw. You can keep swinging, it's still the wrong tool. Here's a simple framework for thinking about where your money belongs. First layer, your emergency fund. This is 3 to 6 months of living expenses. This money lives in a high-yield savings account. Period. This is the one place where safety and liquidity matter more than returns, because this money's job is to be there immediately if something goes wrong. Keep it accessible. Keep it boring. Keep it earning whatever the best HYSA rate is right now. This money is doing its job correctly. Second layer, money you'll need in 1 to 3 years. Maybe you're saving for a house down payment, a car, a wedding, a big trip. This money should also stay relatively liquid and stable. High-yield savings or short-term treasury bills or CDs work well here. You don't want this money in the market because the timing is too short. You can't afford to wait out a market dip. Third layer, everything beyond that. Money you won't touch for 5 years or more. Retirement, long-term wealth building. This money has one job, and its job is to grow. This belongs in the market. Index funds, retirement accounts, brokerage accounts. This is where real wealth is built, compounded, and eventually transformed into financial independence. Most people who are saving responsibly are doing layer 1 and layer 2 correctly and completely ignoring layer 3. And that is why they feel stuck. They're handling the short-term correctly and leaving the long-term on the table. Here's the thing that makes this so hard to fix. The savings account feels safe, and feeling safe is incredibly powerful. Our brains are wired to avoid perceived risk, even when the real risk, inflation, opportunity cost, time passing, is completely invisible. You can't see purchasing power evaporating. You can't feel opportunity cost. But you can very vividly imagine your investment account dropping 20% in a bad market, and that image sticks. This is what behavioral economists call loss aversion. The pain of losing $1,000 feels roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $1,000. So we make decisions that protect us from visible, dramatic losses, even when those decisions expose us to slower, invisible, but ultimately larger losses. Your savings account is the financial equivalent of hiding your money under a mattress, just with slightly better marketing. But here's what I want you to actually hear, because this is the part most people miss when they learn about this stuff. The goal isn't to move all your money into the market and stress about it every day. The goal is to become someone who understands what each dollar is actually doing, someone who makes intentional decisions instead of default ones.